Take a slow breath in and let it go. There is nothing you need to do right now. No place you need to go. No thought you need to hold on to. Let the day loosen its grip. This is a quiet story about patience, discipline, and the long road out of the mountains. A story meant to be listened to with your eyes closed. A story you don't need to finish. If sleep comes, let it come. If your mind drifts, let it drift. Just listen and rest. Manny Pacquiao was born on December 17, 1978, in the province of Bukidnon, deep in the mountains of the Philippines. The land was green and wide, but life was narrow and hard. The mornings came early, and hunger often came with them. His family was poor, very poor. The house was small, made of wood and tin, and when rain came, it found its way and came even harder. Manny was still a child, but childhood ended quickly. He slept where he could. He worked when he could. He learned early that no one was coming to save him. At night, he listened to the sounds of the mountains, insects, wind, distant voices, and he dreamed of something he could not yet name. Not success, not fame, just escape. He discovered boxing by accident. In the villages, people gathered around small televisions when there was electricity. Old fights played on fuzzy screens. Manny watched men move, strike, defend, fall, rise again. Something in the rhythm spoke to him. Something in the struggle felt familiar. He began to box without gloves, without a ring, without training. He shadowboxed in the dirt. He punched banana trees. He ran through the hills, not for sport, but because running was free. When he was a teenager, he left home. He had no money, no plan, only the belief that his hands could carry him somewhere else. He traveled to Manila alone, sleeping on the streets, finding food where he could. The city was loud and unforgiving, but Manny did not stop moving. Eventually, he found a boxing gym. The gym was hot, crowded, and filled with men who wanted the same thing he did. A chance. Manny trained harder than anyone. He ran longer. He hit the bag till his hands bled. He listened more than he spoke. When he finally fought, it was for almost nothing. Small money, no attention. But he won. And then he won again, and again. Each fight was another step away from hunger. Each punch was another promise to the boy he had been in the mountains. And slowly, quietly, Manny Pacquiao began to climb, not toward fame, but toward survival. The first wins did not change his life overnight. Money came slowly, in small envelopes that disappeared just as quickly as they arrived. Manny sent most of it home, keeping only what he needed to eat and train. Some nights, he still slept in the gym, using folded clothes as pillows, listening to the sound of the city through broken windows. But something had begun to move. In the gym, coaches noticed his speed first. Not the kind that came from strength, but from hunger. His punches arrived before opponents expected them. His feet carried him forward relentlessly, never slowing, never hesitating. He fought as if stopping meant falling back into the life he had escaped. So he did not stop. He trained before sunrise, running through the streets of Manila while the city slept. He trained again at night, when the air was heavy and the gym smelled of sweat and effort. He skipped meals so he could afford bus rides to fights. He skipped rest so he could take more rounds. Slowly, the gyms began to remember his name. Manny Pacquiao fought anyone who would face him. Older fighters, bigger fighters, more experienced fighters. He did not care about records or reputations. He cared only about the bell and what he could do between its sound and silence. When he lost, he learned. When he won, he trained harder. At 16 years old, Manny turned professional, barely heavy enough to meet the limit. His body was small, but his will was not. He fought often, sometimes every few weeks, because fighting paid more than waiting. In 1998, He won his first major title in the Philippines. The belt was simple, but it felt heavy in his hands. Not because of gold, but because of meaning. It meant he could send more money home. It meant his family could eat. It meant the boy from the mountains had found a path, but the world was still far away. International fighters did not know him. Promoters did not call. The lights were still small, the crowd still close, the night still uncertain. Manny did not complain. He trained. When the call finally came, it was sudden. A fight in the United States. Short notice. No time to prepare properly. A chance to step onto a bigger stage. Most fighters would have said no. Manny said yes. He borrowed gear. He packed lightly. He left everything familiar behind and flew across the ocean, carrying nothing but discipline and belief. The arena was bigger than anything he had seen. The lights were blinding. The crowd felt distant, unreal. But the bell sounded the same. And when it did, Manny Pacquiao moved forward. Just as he always had. The fight was meant to be easy for his opponent. Manny had been brought in as a replacement, unknown, underprepared, and small. The world expected him to last a few rounds and then disappear back into the background. But when the bell rang, something unexpected happened. He did not disappear. He attacked with speed that shocked the crowd, with angles his opponent could not read, with movement that came from years of running hills and fighting hunger. Each punch carried the weight of survival. Each step forward carried the promise he had made to himself long ago. Before the fight could settle into rhythm, it was over. Manny had won by knockout. The arena fell silent for a moment, as if the world needed time to understand what had just happened. And then the noise came, loud and sudden, as people tried to say his name correctly for the first time. That night, Manny Pacquiao changed the direction of his life. But he did not celebrate. He returned to the gym the next morning and trained. Opportunities came faster now. Fights were offered again and again, each one larger than the last. Manny took them all. He traveled between countries, between weight classes, between expectations, never slowing down long enough to become comfortable. In 2001, he won his first world title. The belt was real this time. Heavy, bright, impossible to ignore. The boy who had slept on gym floors now stood under lights that reached every corner of the world. Cameras followed him. Reporters asked questions. People wanted to know his story. He told it simply. He was hungry. He trained. He fought. As his fame grew, so did the weight of responsibility. Manny sent more money home. He built a house for his family. He paid for his siblings' schooling. He gave to villages that looked like the one he had left behind. The mountains had not left him. Inside the ring, Manny became something new. Not just fast, but fearless. Not just aggressive, but relentless. Opponents could not match his pace. They could not predict his movement. They could not survive his pressure. Titles came in different weight classes. Victories stacked on victories. Records were broken quietly, almost accidentally, as Manny moved forward without stopping to look back. But with success came something else. Pressure. The fights became bigger, the opponents stronger, the expectations heavier. Manny trained harder than ever, chasing the calm he once had when all he needed to do was survive. In the quiet moments, alone after training, he sometimes remembered the mountains, the stillness, the simplicity, the nights when the only thing that mattered was rest. Those memories grounded him. They reminded him that no matter how loud the world became, the path was always the same. Step forward, breathe, do the work. And Manny Pacquiao kept walking. As Manny's name grew, so did the distance between the life he lived and the life he remembered. He traveled constantly now. Airports replaced streets. Hotels replaced gym floors. The rhythm of hunger was replaced by the rhythm of schedules. Training camps, interviews, fights, flights, everything moved faster, louder, brighter. But Manny stayed the same. He woke early. He ran. He trained. He prayed. Faith became the quiet anchor in his days. When the world grew noisy, he closed his eyes and returned to something simple and steady. In prayer, he found the stillness the mountains once gave him. In routine, he found peace. The fights became legendary. He moved through divisions like water, changing weight, changing opponents, changing history. He fought champions. Champions fell, and then he moved again. Each fight felt like a test, not just of skill, but of endurance. How long could he carry this pace without breaking? In 2008, the world watched something it had never seen before. Manny Pacquiao fought and defeated one of boxing's most dominant champions, doing it with speed, precision, and calm. The victory echoed around the world. Commentators searched for words. Fans searched for meaning. The boy from Bukidnon had become a symbol, but symbols are heavy to carry. In quiet moments, Manny felt the weight of expectation pressing against his chest. Every fight now was supposed to be magic. Every performance had to be greater than the last. The world no longer wanted effort. It wanted miracles. So Manny returned to the basics. Long runs in the dark, endless rounds on the bag, silent drives to the gym. He trained not for applause, but for balance. He trained to remember who he was before the noise arrived. When he fought again, he fought with calm. Victories followed, but they felt different now. The hunger had changed shape. It was no longer about escaping poverty. It was about staying grounded while standing at the top. And in that space between effort and stillness, Manny Pacquiao learned the hardest lesson of all, that climbing is easier than staying. So he stayed. As Manny's name grew, so did the distance between the life he lived and the life he remembered. He traveled constantly now. Airports replaced streets. Hotels replaced gym floors. The rhythm of hunger was replaced by the rhythm of schedules. Training camps, interviews, fights, flights, everything moved faster, louder, brighter. But Manny stayed the same. He woke early. He ran. He trained. He prayed. Faith became the quiet anchor in his days. When the world grew noisy, he closed his eyes and returned to something simple and steady. In prayer, he found the stillness the mountains once gave him. In routine, he found peace. The fights became legendary. He moved through divisions like water, changing weight, changing opponents, changing history. He fought champions. Champions fell, and then he moved again. Each fight felt like a test, not just of skill, but of endurance. How long could he carry this pace without breaking? In 2008, the world watched something it had never seen before. Manny Pacquiao fought and defeated one of boxing's most dominant champions, doing it with speed, precision, and calm. The victory echoed around the world. Commentators searched for words. Fans searched for meaning. The boy from Bukidnon had become a symbol, but symbols are heavy to carry. In quiet moments, Manny felt the weight of expectation pressing against his chest. Every fight now was supposed to be magic. Every performance had to be greater than the last. The world no longer wanted effort. It wanted miracles. So Manny returned to the basics. Long runs in the dark. Endless rounds on the bag. Silent drives to the gym. He trained not for applause, but for balance. He trained to remember who he was before the noise arrived. When he fought again, he fought with calm. Victories followed, but they felt different now. The hunger had changed shape. It was no longer about escaping poverty. It was about staying grounded while standing at the top. And in that space between effort and stillness, Manny Pacquiao learned the hardest lesson of all, that climbing is easier than staying. So he stayed. No journey stays effortless forever. After years of moving forward without pause, Manny began to feel something new, resistance. Not from opponents, but from his own body. The mornings were still early, the runs still long, but the recovery took more time. The breath came slower. The silence between rounds stretched. At first, he ignored it. He trained the same way he always had. Hard, relentless, without complaint. But time is patient, and it waits for no one. Small aches became lingering pains. Cuts took longer to heal. Nights were quieter, heavier. The world, however, did not slow with him. Fans still wanted greatness. Promoters still wanted miracles. The noise remained loud, demanding, endless. Manny carried it without showing the weight, the way he always had. But inside, something was changing. Loss arrived not as failure, but as instruction. When he lost, he did not panic. He returned to training. He prayed. He listened. Loss reminded him that nothing stays the same forever. Not speed, not power, not dominance. What mattered was how he responded. And he responded with humility. He adjusted his style. He relied more on timing than speed, more on patience than pressure. He learned to win in new ways, quieter ways, ways that did not require burning everything at once. The fights were different now. Not weaker, not smaller, just slower, deeper, more deliberate. Between camps, Manny spent more time at home. He sat with his family. He walked through the places that had once felt unreachable. He remembered why he started, and who he had started for. Faith grew stronger. In prayer, he found acceptance, not of defeat, but of change. He understood that the body ages, but purpose does not have to fade with it. Purpose simply shifts shape. When he stepped into the ring again, he did so with peace. Win or lose, he was no longer running from hunger. He was walking toward meaning. And in that calm, Manny Pacquiao found a different kind of strength, one that did not rush, did not force, did not fear the end. Because the end, he now understood, was not something to avoid. It was something to arrive at gently. The space between fights grew longer. Not because Manny could not fight, but because he no longer needed to rush. Camps were chosen carefully now. Dates were spaced out. The body needed time, and for the first time in his life, Manny allowed himself to give it that. Training became softer, but not weaker. He still ran before sunrise, but he listened to his breath now. He still hit the bag, but he stopped when his hands told him to. He still prayed, still rested, still followed the same rhythm that had carried him from the mountains to the world. Only now, the rhythm was slower, like a song reaching its final notes. In the quiet days, Manny found himself thinking more. He thought about the boy who had left home with nothing. He thought about the first gym that gave him a chance. He thought about the fights that had taken everything from him, and the ones that had given everything back. The memories no longer felt heavy. They felt warm. When the call came for another fight, Manny accepted calmly. No excitement, no fear, just understanding. Each fight now felt like a conversation with time, not a battle to outrun it. The crowd still roared. The lights still burned. The bells still sounded the same. But Manny stepped into the ring differently. He moved with patience. He smiled more. He let moments pass without forcing them. When punches landed, he accepted them. When opportunities opened, he took them gently. Win or lose, the ring no longer defined him. After one fight, he sat alone in the locker room, wrapping his hands slowly, feeling the stillness settle in his chest. There was no sadness in it, only calm. The kind of calm that comes when a long journey begins to feel complete. Outside, the world continued to spin. Inside, Manny rested. And for the first time since he was a boy, the quiet between fights felt like home. When Manny finally spent more time at home than on the road, the change felt strange at first. The days were quieter, the mornings softer. There were no flights to catch, No weigh-ins to fear, no crowds waiting. The silence that once felt empty now felt wide and generous, like space he could finally step into. He woke early out of habit, not necessity. The sun rose slowly over the hills, the same way it had when he was a child. The air smelled familiar. Warm earth, leaves, rain when it came. Manny walked through the land, feeling the ground beneath his feet, remembering the boy who had once run these paths with nothing but hunger in his chest. Now, hunger was different. It was not for food, not for victory, not for survival. It was for peace. He spent time with his family, sitting longer at the table, listening more than speaking. These moments had once been rare, stolen between camps and travel. Now they were steady, ordinary, and deeply satisfying. He watched his children grow, watched them laugh, watched them live without the weight he had carried. The gym still called to him, not to fight, but to teach. Young boxers came, eyes wide, hands eager, hearts restless. Manny saw himself in them, the rush, the impatience, the need to prove something quickly. He guided them gently, showing them how to slow down, how to breathe, how to stay calm when the body wanted to explode with effort. Boxing is not only speed, he told them. It is listening. They listened, and slowly they learned. In the evenings, Manny prayed quietly, giving thanks not for victories, but for time, for stillness, for the ability to wake up without fear of tomorrow. Faith, once a shelter, had become a home. The world still spoke his name, but it felt far away now, like an echo fading into the mountains. Manny Pacquiao had traveled farther than most men ever would, and now, at last, he had returned. There comes a moment when a man knows the road is behind him, not because he is tired, not because he cannot continue, but because continuing would no longer mean growth. For Manny, that moment arrived quietly, without announcement, without drama. It came in the early mornings, when he finished his run and felt no urgency to push further. It came in the gym, when the bell rang and his heart stayed calm instead of hungry. It came in prayer, when the silence answered him more clearly than any crowd ever had. The decision to step away did not feel like loss. It felt like release. When he entered the ring for the last time, he did so with gratitude, not fire. He moved with respect, not desperation. Each step was deliberate, as if he were walking through memory rather than competition. The punches were lighter, the rhythm slower. The crowd still roared, but it sounded distant, like waves heard from shore. When the fight ended, Manny bowed his head, not to the judges, not to the belt, but to the journey. There were no speeches filled with noise, only quiet words of thanks. To God, to his family, to the people who had believed in a boy from the mountains when he had nothing to offer but effort. As he left the ring, he did not look back, because everything he needed was already with him. That night, at home, he slept deeply. The kind of sleep he had not known since childhood. The kind that comes when the body and the mind finally agree that the work is done. The world continued without him. Fights happened. Titles changed. New champions rose. But Manny Pacquiao was no longer chasing time. He was walking with it. And for the first time in his life, the road ahead was quiet enough to rest. Morning arrives gently now. There is no alarm, no schedule waiting, no reason to hurry. Manny wakes as the light fills the room, soft and warm, the way it did when he was a boy in the mountains. He breathes deeply and feels the quiet settle inside him, steady and complete. The day unfolds slowly. He walks outside, listening to the sounds of the land waking, birds, wind, distant voices carried by air. The world feels wide again, not because it has grown larger, but because he has stopped running through it. He trains sometimes, but only for himself. A light run, a few rounds on the bag, movement for the joy of movement. The body thanks him for listening now. The aches fade faster. The breath stays calm. In the gym, young fighters still arrive, still eager, still restless. Manny watches them with patience, smiling at their hunger. He knows that hunger well. He does not rush to quiet it. Hunger must burn before it can soften. When he teaches, his voice is calm. Slow down, he says. Feel the moment. Stay here. They try. And in trying, they begin to understand. In the evenings, Manny sits with his family, sharing food, sharing stories, sharing silence. These moments, once rare, now fill his life completely. There is nothing missing in them, nothing to chase beyond them. Before sleep, he prays softly, not asking for anything, only giving thanks for the road, for the struggle, for the strength to let go. The mountains that once shaped him now hold him gently. They no longer demand effort. They offer rest. Manny closes his eyes and breathes slowly. The story does not end here. It simply becomes quiet enough to sleep, and in that quiet, he finally rests. The evenings stretch longer now, as if time itself has learned to slow its steps. Manny sits outside as the sun lowers, watching light move across the hills the same way it has his whole life. Nothing calls him inside. Nothing pulls him forward. The day has finished what it needed to do. The air cools gently. He listens to it move through the trees, through the grass, through the open spaces where noise once lived. The world feels softer here, far from arenas and crowds, far from the rhythm of bells and rounds. This is the sound he missed without knowing. Sometimes memories come quietly. Not the loud ones, not the fights, not the lights, but the small moments. Sleeping on gym floors, running before sunrise, eating rice alone after training. The memories arrive without weight now, like old friends stopping by. He lets them pass. In the distance, children laugh. Somewhere, a radio plays softly. Life continues without urgency, without expectation. Manny breathes deeply and feels his chest rise and fall in an easy rhythm, unbroken, unforced. The night sky opens slowly. Stars appear one by one, steady and patient. The same stars that watched him leave the mountains and watched him return. He sits beneath them and feels something settle inside him, something that does not need a name. This is what the journey was for. Not the belts, not the applause, not the numbers written beside his name. This, a quiet evening, a calm breath, a body at rest. When he finally stands and walks inside, the house is warm and still. He lies down without thought, without planning tomorrow. Sleep comes gently, the way it used to when life was simple. And as the night deepens, Manny Pacquiao rests, not as a fighter, not as a champion, but as a man who has finally arrived where he began. In the silence, everything feels complete. Before the world knew his name, Manny Pacquiao climbed one fight at a time. There was no straight path, no easy rise. Only a long series of nights where he stepped into the ring, carrying everything he had, and left with nothing but experience. After his first world title, the fights became harder. Opponents were stronger, smarter, more prepared. Manny no longer surprised anyone. They studied him. They planned for him. They tried to slow him down. But slowing Manny had never been easy. He fought Marco Antonio Barrera, a master of control and patience. The world expected a lesson for the young fighter from the Philippines. Instead, Manny overwhelmed him with speed and pressure, breaking the rhythm of a man who had never been broken that way before. When the fight ended, silence filled the arena. People realized this was different. Then came Eric Morales, proud, experienced, dangerous. Their first fight was a loss. Manny learned. He did not complain. He returned to training and listened. In the rematch, he adjusted. In the third fight, he dominated. The loss had become a lesson, and the lesson became growth. Juan Manuel Marquez followed, sharp, technical, patient. Their battles were wars of timing and breath, of waiting and exploding. They fought again and again, each time closer, each time deeper. Manny learned that greatness was not about winning easily, but about returning again when nothing was guaranteed. And still, he climbed. He moved up in weight, chasing challenges that made no sense on paper. Bigger men, stronger men, men who were supposed to stop him. Instead, they fell, one by one, as Manny carried his speed and faith into divisions no one believed he belonged in. When he fought Oscar de la Hoya, the world watched in disbelief. This was supposed to be a passing of the torch. Instead, it was a moment of transformation. Manny's movement was endless, his pressure unbreakable. The legend sat on his stool and did not rise again. And the world finally understood. This was not a man running from hunger anymore. This was a man running toward history. But Manny did not slow down to look at it. He trained. He prayed. He fought again. Because the climb was not finished. And the mountains, somewhere far away, were still watching. After the great victories, the weight became heavier. Manny Pacquiao was no longer just a fighter. He was a nation's hope. Every time he fought, the Philippines seemed to stop. Streets emptied. Radios played softly. Families gathered around screens, praying together, breathing together, waiting for the bell. Manny felt it every time he entered the ring. The pressure was not loud, but it was deep. It sat in his chest during training. It followed him into prayer. It waited with him in the quiet moments before sleep. He was fighting for more than himself now, and that changed everything. He fought Ricky Hatton in 2009, a man known for strength and relentless pressure. The fight ended quickly. Manny's speed cut through everything. When Hatton fell, the arena fell silent, and then the world exploded. Another division conquered, another limit broken. He moved again, and again. Each weight class felt like stepping into deeper water. The men were bigger, the punches heavier, the risks greater. But Manny kept moving forward, guided by faith and routine, not fear. Then came Miguel Cotto, a champion with heart and power, fighting for pride as much as belts. The fight was long and painful. Manny took punishment. He gave more. When it ended, both men stood changed. Manny had climbed another mountain. By now, the world spoke of him in sentences that felt unreal. 8 divisions. 8 titles. No one had done this before. But inside, Manny still felt like the boy from Bukidnon. Still hungry, but now for peace more than victory. He trained harder, not to prove anything, but to stay balanced beneath the growing weight of expectation. Then came the fight everyone waited for, the one that took years to arrive, the one that carried too much noise. When Manny finally faced Floyd Mayweather, the world held its breath. The fight was cautious, slow, measured. Not a war, but a chess match. Manny pressed forward. Floyd moved away. Time passed. When it ended, Manny had lost by decision. There was no anger, no excuses, only acceptance. He bowed his head and thanked God for the journey, because by then, Manny understood something the world did not. The climb had already been completed. The rest was just walking down gently. And that, too, required strength. After the biggest fight of his life, something changed. Not in the world. The world stayed loud, but inside Manny, where things finally began to soften. The questions stopped mattering. The arguments faded. The need to explain disappeared. He had climbed as high as he needed to climb. And now, the body asked for quiet. Training continued, but differently. Manny listened more. He rested when he needed to. He prayed longer, ran shorter, smiled more. The fire that once pushed him forward had not gone out. It had simply turned into warmth. He fought again, not to prove anything, but because he still loved the rhythm of it. The bell, the movement, the calm inside the chaos. Each fight now felt like a conversation instead of a battle, a way of checking in with himself. Victories came, losses came. Manny accepted both with the same breath. Outside the ring, life expanded. He spent time in his hometown, walking the same roads he once ran to escape. He saw children training in small gyms, eyes full of hunger, and he recognized himself in them. He gave quietly, without cameras, without announcements. Food, equipment, opportunity. This was a different kind of fight. In the evenings, he sat with family and listened to stories that had nothing to do with boxing. Laughter replaced pressure. Silence replaced noise. The long road began to feel complete. The world still called him a legend. Manny did not answer. He knew the truth. The boy from the mountains had climbed the world and returned without losing himself. And that, more than any belt, was the real victory. The nights grew longer, the mornings softer, the pace slower, and Manny Pacquiao rested in the quiet he had earned. As the noise of boxing faded, a new kind of responsibility slowly took its place. Manny Pacquiao found himself listening to people in ways he never had before, not as a fighter, not as a champion, but as a man who had walked through hunger, pressure, victory, and loss, and come out the other side still standing. The Philippines was changing, and people were speaking to him. They spoke about roads that needed fixing, schools that needed books, families that needed help. Manny listened quietly, the same way he listened in the gym. He did not rush to answer. He prayed. He thought. He waited. When he entered public service, it was not with confidence, but with humility. He knew this was a different ring, one with no bell and no clear rounds. The work was slower. The fights were invisible. The victories harder to measure. But he showed up anyway. He traveled to small towns, sat in simple rooms, listened to stories that reminded him of his own. Hunger, uncertainty, hope. The same themes he had carried into every fight now followed him here, asking for patience instead of punches. Some days were heavy. Some days felt pointless. Some days felt like progress. Manny accepted them all. In the quiet moments, he still trained. Light runs, gentle shadowboxing. Movement for peace, not for preparation. The body remembered its rhythm, and the rhythm calmed the mind. At night, he prayed for guidance, not victory. He asked for strength, not speed. And slowly, he learned that this life, like boxing, required endurance more than brilliance. The mountains of his childhood felt closer now, even when he was far from them. Their silence followed him into offices, into meetings, into decisions that carried weight he could not see. And through it all, Manny stayed gentle. The world still remembered him as a fighter, but he was learning to be something else. And in that learning, he found a new kind of peace, one that did not require applause to exist. Life begins to slow in ways that are hard to notice at first. Not all at once, not suddenly, but gently, like the tide pulling back from shore. For Manny Pacquiao, the years of constant motion finally began to loosen their grip. The days no longer felt like rounds to be survived. They felt like hours to be lived. He woke without urgency, moved without pressure, and allowed time to unfold at its own pace. The body rested more now. He still trained, but only to stay connected to himself. A quiet run at sunrise. A few rounds on the bag in the afternoon. Stretching in the evening when the light was soft and the air was still. The work no longer demanded anything from him. It simply reminded him who he was. He spent more time with his family, sitting in silence that felt full instead of empty. Meals lasted longer. Conversations wandered. Laughter came easily. These moments had once been rare, fragile, interrupted by camps and fights and travel. Now they were steady, ordinary, and precious. At night, Manny prayed without asking. He thanked God for the road, for the struggle, for the strength to keep going when the end was nowhere in sight, for the wisdom to stop when the journey was complete. The world still spoke his name, but it sounded distant now, like thunder heard far away. Titles changed hands. New champions rose. Old fights replayed on screens. Manny watched some of it, but none of it pulled him back. He had already finished his work. Sometimes he walked alone and remembered the boy he once was, hungry, tired, running through the mountains with nothing but belief. He felt gratitude instead of sadness. That boy had carried him everywhere he needed to go. And now, finally, that boy could rest. The storm had passed. The noise had faded. All that remained was breath, slow, steady, calm. And in that breath, Manny Pacquiao found the stillness he had been chasing his entire life. When the world finally stopped asking, Manny stayed. He stayed in the mornings when the light moved slowly across the hills. He stayed in the afternoons when the heat made everything quiet. He stayed in the evenings when the air cooled and the land began to breathe again. This staying was new. For most of his life, Manny had been moving, running from hunger, running toward opportunity, running through divisions and cities and expectations. Now the movement was gone, and what remained was presence. He walked the same paths each day, not for training, but for grounding. The sound of his footsteps became familiar, steady, comforting. The land no longer reminded him of where he came from. It reminded him of where he was. Sometimes young fighters joined him. They walked silently at his side, unsure what to say. Manny did not fill the space. He let silence teach them what words never could. "You don't need to hurry," he said once, softly. "Time will meet you where you are." They remembered that. In the gym, he trained less and watched more. He noticed breath before punches, balance before speed, calm before action. These were the things that lasted. These were the things he passed on. In the evenings, he sat with his family and listened to stories that had nothing to do with boxing. The ordinary life he had once missed now filled him completely. There was no gap, no longing, no unfinished work. Before sleep, he stepped outside and looked at the sky. The same stars, the same quiet, the same slow rhythm. He breathed deeply, feeling the day settle into his bones. The man who once carried a nation had learned to carry only himself, and that was enough. There is a kind of silence that only comes after a long journey. It is not empty. It is not lonely. It is full of understanding. Manny Pacquiao began to notice it in the small moments. When the house was quiet in the early morning, when the gym echoed after everyone had left, when the land rested under the evening sky. This silence did not ask anything from him. It only offered space. And in that space, he learned. He learned that strength is not always forward motion, that discipline does not end when the fight ends, that purpose can be quiet and still be real. Young fighters still came to him for advice. They wanted shortcuts, secrets, answers. Manny gave them none of those things. He gave them habits instead. Wake up early. Do the work. Respect the day. Some understood. Some didn't. But the lesson stayed in the room long after he finished speaking. He spent more time walking alone now, letting thoughts pass without holding them. The mountains no longer felt like something he had escaped. They felt like something that had been waiting patiently for him to return. In the afternoons, he sat outside and listened to the wind move through trees, the same sound that had filled his childhood nights. It reminded him that life had always been simple, and it was people who made it complicated. When night came, he rested easily. There were no dreams of bells or crowds anymore, only wide open spaces and slow-moving light. The body slept deeply. The mind followed. Manny Pacquiao had learned the final lesson of the long road. That silence, when accepted, becomes a teacher. And the teacher never leaves. Days begin to repeat in the best possible way. Manny wakes as light enters the room, not because he must, but because his body remembers. There is comfort in this rhythm. The same tea, the same chair, the same quiet air before the world fully wakes. Nothing asks for him. Nothing pulls him forward. He walks outside and feels the morning settle around him. The land is alive in small ways. Birds moving, leaves shifting, distant sounds carried softly by wind. He breathes deeply and lets the day arrive without rushing it. This is how he once trained for fights. Now it is how he trains for life. The gym opens later. Young fighters arrive, stretching, laughing, nervous and hopeful. Manny watches them with calm eyes. He sees the beginning of journeys he knows well. He does not interrupt. He lets them feel the work, because feeling is how understanding begins. When he speaks, it is brief. Again, slow. Breathe. The words are simple. The meaning is not. Afternoons pass quietly. He eats slowly, rests when tired, walks when the body asks for movement. The pressure that once lived inside him has gone. In its place is awareness. He listens to his body the way he once listened to his corner between rounds. Evenings are the softest part of the day. The sun lowers. The air cools. Shadows stretch. Manny sits outside and lets the light fade naturally, the way fights once ended, not with chaos, but with acceptance. He thinks of nothing in particular, and in that nothing he finds rest. This is the rhythm now. Wake, move, teach, rest, breathe. The same rhythm that carried him from hunger to history now carries him gently into peace. And for the first time, ordinary days feel like the greatest victory of all. Sometimes, without warning, memory returns. Not loudly, not painfully, but softly, like a breeze that carries the past without asking you to follow it. Manny feels it when he walks through small towns and sees boys hitting old tires with worn gloves. He feels it when he hears the sound of a bell from a distant gym, echoing through open air. The sound pulls something gentle from inside him, something he does not resist. He remembers the first roads he walked alone, the first nights he slept hungry, the first gym that smelled like sweat and hope. The memories no longer ache. They warm him. He understands now that the road was never something to escape. It was something to carry. Every step, every fight, every loss, every victory became part of the ground he stands on today. The past is not behind him. It is beneath him, holding him steady. In the gym, he shares stories sometimes, not the big ones, not the famous ones, the small ones, waiting for rides that never came, skipping meals, running in the rain, laughing when nothing else made sense. The young fighters listen closely because they know these are the truths that last. Don't rush the road, Manny tells them. Teaches you while you walk it. In the evenings, he sits quietly as the sky darkens, watching the land slow down with him. The stars appear one by one, steady and patient. The same stars that watched him leave and watched him return. He breathes deeply. The road no longer calls him forward. It simply reminds him that he has already arrived. Night comes slowly now, as if it knows there is no need to hurry. Manny sits outside while the light fades, watching the world soften around him. The hills lose their sharp edges. The air cools. Sounds grow distant and kind. This is the hour he loves most, when nothing is expected and everything is allowed to rest. He listens to his breath. Slow in, slow out. The same rhythm that carried him through rounds, through years, through hunger and hope now carries him into stillness. The body understands. The mind follows. Inside the house, life is quiet. A lamp glows softly. Voices are low. There is warmth here, not just in walls and light, but in the way the day ends without effort. Manny steps inside and moves gently, as if the air itself is sleeping. He sits for a moment before lying down, hands resting on his knees, eyes half closed. He does not think of tomorrow. He does not replay yesterday. The need to measure time has faded. This is what remains when the long fight is over. A calm breath, a resting body, a quiet heart. Manny lies down and lets sleep arrive the way it always wanted to, without resistance, without fear, without noise. The road behind him is long and full, but it no longer pulls. The road ahead is empty, and that emptiness feels peaceful. Outside, the land rests. Inside, so does he. And in that stillness, the story becomes quiet enough to fade away. Sleep comes differently now. Not suddenly, not heavily, but like mist rolling gently across the hills, covering everything without asking permission. Manny lies still and listens to the quiet. The house is settled. The land has settled. Even the memories have grown soft, losing their edges in the dark. His breath moves slowly, steady, and deep. The same rhythm he learned long ago when nights were cold and mornings came too early. The mountains watch. They have always watched. They watched a boy run barefoot through hunger. They watched a young man leave with nothing but belief. They watched a fighter carry a nation across oceans and divisions. And now they watch a man rest. The wind moves gently outside, brushing leaves, touching walls, reminding the world to slow. Manny's body sinks deeper into stillness. There is no tension left to hold, no future to chase, no past to escape. Only this moment. The breath becomes quieter. The thoughts drift further apart. The space between them grows wide and calm. This is the sleep he earned. Not the sleep of exhaustion, but the sleep of completion. In the darkness, the story loosens its grip, like hands finally opening after a long hold. The road that once demanded everything now asks for nothing at all. The mountains keep watch, and Manny Pacquiao rests, carried gently by the silence that shaped him from the beginning. The night is deep now, so deep that even time seems to have stopped moving. Manny's breathing is slow and even, rising and falling like the hills around the home he once left and finally returned to. The world outside has grown quiet enough to hear itself. The wind barely moves. The stars hold their places in the sky. Nothing is rushing anymore. This is where all journeys end. Not with noise, not with applause, not with answers, but with rest. The boy from the mountains is no longer running. The fighter is no longer fighting. The champion is no longer carrying anything at all. Only the breath remains. Slow, steady, calm. The land remembers him the way it remembers everything, without judgment, without urgency, without needing to hold on. The mountains keep their silence. The same silence that once taught him discipline, patience, and strength. And now that silence teaches him how to sleep. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to become, nothing left to prove. Just this moment gently fading. If your thoughts are still moving, let them slow. If your body is still awake, let it soften. If sleep has not come yet, let it come when it is ready. The story will not mind. It will simply rest here with you, breath by breath, moment by moment, quietly. And when sleep arrives, it will arrive gently, the same way this story ends, without effort, without sound, without needing to be finished.